The massive crystal chambers of the Galactic Council buzz with nervous energy as Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Alliance presented his intelligence report. The holographic display showed a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star in the outer rim, spinning slowly in the center of the Great Hall. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched with growing unease. Veltar's four arms moved gracefully as he manipulated the data streams floating in the air. His purple skin had taken on a darker shade, something his species did when deeply troubled. "The species calls themselves humans," he announced, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "They originate from a Class 12 death world with gravity 1.7 times standard, atmospheric toxicity levels that would kill most of us within minutes, and predatory fauna that—" He paused, his large black eyes scanning his notes one more time. "That they apparently keep as companions." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The Althari delegate, a peaceful being who had never seen violence in her 1,000-year lifetime, clutched her chest with delicate fingers. Even the war-hardened Kronak representatives, whose own homeworld was considered harsh by galactic standards, leaned forward with concern. "Show us more," demanded Council Prime Thex, her tentacles writhing with curiosity and fear. The holographic display shifted to show biological scans of human anatomy. What they saw defied everything they knew about life in the galaxy. These creatures had dense bone structures that could withstand impacts that would shatter most beings. Their muscle fibers were designed for endurance rather than quick bursts of power, allowing them to chase prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. "They are persistence predators," Veltar explained, highlighting the cardiovascular system. "Unlike us, who tire quickly and need rest, these beings can maintain steady movement for hours. Some reports suggest they can run continuously for over 26 miles without stopping." The Zolarian ambassador, whose species could barely walk a mile before needing rest, made a sound of disbelief. "Impossible. No creature can sustain such activity." "I thought so, too," Veltar replied, pulling up more data. "But our deep space scouts had confirmed it. They have observed humans engaging in what they call marathons, where thousands of them run 26 miles together, apparently for enjoyment." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Several delegates began backing away from the holographic displays, as if the images themselves posed a threat. "There's more," Veltar continued, his voice growing more serious. "Their healing capabilities are extraordinary. They can survive blood loss that would kill any of us. Their bones can break and grow back stronger. They can even regrow entire sections of their liver if damaged." But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. The display showed brain scans highlighting neural pathways that glowed with unusual activity. They display pack bonding behavior so intense that it borders on the supernatural, Veltar explained. "These beings will form emotional attachments not just with their own species, but with any creature they encounter. Our scouts have observed them caring for the sick and injured of completely different species, even at great personal risk." The Mechanical Collective's representative, a being of pure logic, questioned this with electronic clicks. "This behavior serves no evolutionary purpose. Why would they risk themselves for others?" "We don't understand it either," Veltar admitted, "but the evidence is overwhelming. They have been observed forming bonds with their prey animals, their predators, their tools, their vehicles, and even abstract concepts. They will die to protect things they have known for mere minutes." The holographic display showed images of humans with their pets, massive beasts with razor-sharp teeth that could easily kill them, yet were treated with affection and care. Other images showed humans caring for small, fragile creatures that served no practical purpose other than what they called companionship. Their technological development is concerning as well, Veltar added, bringing up images of human settlements. They have only recently achieved interstellar flight, yet their approach to engineering is unlike anything we've seen. They build redundancies into everything, as if expecting constant catastrophic failure. Their ships are designed to be repaired with whatever materials are available, rather than requiring specialized components. Council Prime Thex raised one of her tentacles. "What is your assessment of their threat level?" Veltar's skin darkened further. "They haven't shown aggressive intentions toward other species yet, but their very nature makes them unpredictable. A species that forms emotional bonds with everything and has the physical capability to act on those bonds could become involved in any conflict, anywhere in the galaxy. Recommendation? Ask the Council Prime. Quarantine the system immediately. Classify them as threat level, unknown. We need time to study them further before any direct contact is attempted. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. They were about to isolate an entire species based on fear of what they might do, not what they had done. The vote was unanimous. Captain Rest stood on the bridge of his patrol cruiser Dominator, his scaled hands gripping the command rail with confidence. The hegemony had ruled this sector for 3 centuries, and in all that time, no species had dared challenge their authority. His ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with plasma cannons and protected by shields that could deflect asteroid impacts. Behind him, 2 sister ships, the Crusher and Iron Fist, maintained perfect formation. The target on their screens was laughably small. A single exploration vessel, barely a tenth the size of his cruiser, had somehow slipped past their outer sensors and entered the quarantine zone around the Forbidden Soul System. Rest's three-eyed gaze swept over the readings with amusement. The little ship had no military markings, no visible weapons, and energy signatures that suggested primitive technology at best. "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "the vessel appears to be scanning the surrounding space. They're not attempting to flee." Rest's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Of course they're not. They probably don't even realize they're about to die. He activated the communication array, his voice booming across space with the authority of the hegemony military. "Unknown vessel, you have violated hegemony space. Surrender immediately." For a moment, silence filled the void between the ships. Then a voice crackled back through the speakers, and Ref was surprised by how calm it sounded. Most species screamed or begged when faced with hegemony warships. "This is Captain James Mitchell of the Earth vessel Curiosity. We're on a peaceful mission. Request safe passage." Ref's crew exchanged glances. The bridge erupted in harsh laughter, the sound like grinding metal echoing through the chamber. The audacity was almost admirable. This tiny ship, outgunned and completely surrounded, was asking for safe passage. "You're in no position to request anything human," Ref snarled, putting emphasis on species name like it was something distasteful. His tactical display showed the human ship's complete specifications now. Thin hull plating that wouldn't stop a mining laser, engines that were decades behind current technology, and what appeared to be a crew of only 12 individuals. He opened fire. The plasma bolt streaked across space, designed to disable the small ship's engines and leave them helpless. It was meant to be a warning shot, something to make them understand their situation. The blast struck the human vessel dead center, lighting up the darkness with brilliant energy. Ref expected to see the ship tumble helplessly, its systems dead and its crew begging for mercy. Instead, the Curiosity simply shook off the impact and continued on its course. "Impossible," whispered his weapons officer. "That blast should have crippled them." "Their hull plating must be stronger than our scans indicated," Ref muttered, but doubt crept into his voice. The energy discharge patterns didn't match what he'd expect from advanced armor. It was almost as if the ship had simply absorbed the damage and kept going. Then the human vessel did something that made Ref's blood run cold. Instead of trying to flee or sending desperate pleas for mercy, it turned toward his flagship and began accelerating. "Sir," his navigator's voice cracked with disbelief, "they're on a collision course." Ref stared at the tactical display, his 3 eyes wide with shock. The human ship was picking up speed, heading directly for the Dominator S-Bridge section. This wasn't possible. No species in the galaxy would attempt something so suicidal. Ramming was a tactic that meant certain death for both sides. "They're bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No one would actually." "Impact in 15 seconds, the navigator screamed. "Evasive maneuvers," Ref ordered, but his massive cruiser was built for firepower, not agility. The Dominator began to turn, its engines straining to move the enormous bulk of metal and weapons. 10 seconds. The human ship wasn't slowing down. If anything, it seemed to be accelerating faster. 5 seconds. Ref could see the name Curiosity painted on the approaching hull in simple white letters. Through the transparent aluminum of the human bridge, he could make out figures moving calmly at their stations, as if ramming a warship was just another day's work. 2 seconds. Brace for impact. The collision shook both ships like toys in the hands of an angry child. The Dominator S shields flared and died as a human vessel struck with the force of a controlled asteroid impact. Emergency alarms blared throughout the hegemony cruiser as hull breaches opened to space and electrical systems sparked and died. Ref found himself on the floor, his uniform torn and blue blood trickling from a cut above his left eye. Around him, his crew struggled to regain control as their ship tumbled through space, venting atmosphere and debris. But through the chaos and the screaming alarms, a voice crackled calmly over the communication system. It was the same human captain, speaking as if nothing had happened. "Still here, Captain. Ready to talk now." Dr. Kess had spent 30 years studying the most hostile environments the galaxy had to offer. She had walked on worlds where acid rain fell from purple skies, survived in places where the very air would freeze solid, and documented life forms that existed in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres. But nothing in her extensive experience had prepared her for Earth. The research team had materialized using cloaked transport pods in what the humans cheerfully called a temperate forest. The moment Dr. Kess stepped out of her environmental suit's protective barrier, every sensor on her equipment began screaming warnings. This wasn't just a hostile environment. It was a biological war zone where every living thing seemed designed to kill everything else. "The atmospheric composition alone should be lethal," she whispered into her handheld recorder, her tentacles trembling as she adjusted the sensitive instruments. Oxygen levels at 21% would cause cellular damage to most species through oxidative stress, yet somehow these humans require it to survive. Around her, the forest buzzed with activity that made her team's translator units work overtime. The sounds were unlike anything they'd cataloged before. Clicking, buzzing, howling, and rustling that spoke of predators and prey locked in an endless dance of survival. Every tree seemed armed with thorns. Every flowering plant displayed warning colors that screamed poison in the universal language of nature. Dr. Thane, her research partner, pointed a scanner at a nearby plant with delicate purple blooms. "This specimen contains enough toxins to kill a Zephyrian within minutes. Yet look at this." He gestured to a small, fuzzy creature that was casually eating the deadly flowers like they were candy. The local fauna has somehow evolved immunity to poisons that would devastate most galactic species. As if to prove his point, something moved through the underbrush nearby. The research team froze as a creature the size of a small transport vehicle pushed through the vegetation. It had massive claws that could tear through metal, a mouth full of teeth designed for crushing bones, and small, intelligent eyes that spoke of predatory cunning. "Recording emergency beacon activation," Dr. Kess whispered, her 3 hearts racing as she reached for the device that would teleport them to safety. But before she could activate it, a human appeared on the forest path. The female was moving at a steady pace, her feet striking the ground in a rhythmic pattern that Dr. Kess recognized as a human activity called jogging. She wore minimal protective gear, just thin fabric that covered parts of her body and strange cushion attachments on her feet. No armor, no weapons, no environmental suit of any kind. The massive predator that had terrified the research team simply looked up at the approaching human and began making a rapid tail movement that their cultural databases identified as a sign of happiness. The human slowed her pace and broke into what their files labeled as a smile, a facial expression that involved baring teeth, which in most species indicated aggression, but in humans somehow conveyed friendliness. "Hey there, boy. Who's a good dog?" the human said, her voice carrying the kind of affection usually reserved for offspring. Dr. Kess watched in absolute horror as the creature, apparently called a dog, approached a defenseless human with its massive jaws open. This was it. They were about to witness the brutal reality of Earth's ecosystem in action. Instead, the predator began licking the human's face with a tongue the size of Dr. Kess's entire arm, making happy whining sounds while its tail continued its vigorous movement. "Good morning, Patricia," called another voice. A second human appeared, this one an older male carrying a container of steaming liquid. "Beautiful day for a run, isn't it?" Patricia, the first human, scratched behind the massive predator's ears while continuing her conversation. Perfect weather, Robert. Rex here want to come out and say hello to everyone today. Dr. Kess felt her worldview crumbling as she watched this casual interaction. The creature they had identified as an apex predator was behaving like a domesticated companion animal. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Look at the atmospheric readings, Dr. Thane whispered, his voice filled with awe and terror. The air temperature is only 15 degrees above freezing. The humidity is 85%, and there are thousands of microscopic organisms floating in every breath. Any one of these factors should be seriously uncomfortable for a species evolved for survival. Yet, both humans seemed completely comfortable. Patricia resumed her jogging, moving at a pace that would exhaust most galactic species within minutes, while Robert walked calmly through vegetation that was literally trying to poison him with every step. "The chemical analysis is getting worse," reported Dr. Vesh, their team biologist. "I'm detecting trace amount of over 200 different toxins in the air they're breathing. Pollen that would cause severe allergic reactions, spores from fungi that are technically parasites, and enough bacteria to overwhelm most immune systems." Dr. Kess activated her recorder again, her voice barely controlled. "Personal note, we are observing humans in their natural environment. What we initially classified as a death world appears to be their preferred living condition. They seem to have formed symbiotic relationships with apex predators, show immunity to environmental hazards that would hospitalize most species, and demonstrate physical capabilities that our previous reports somehow understated." She paused as Patricia jogged past again, now accompanied by 3 more dogs, and singing something their translators identified as a song, apparently for pure enjoyment. "Recommendation," Dr. Kess whispered into a recorder, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific fascination and primal fear. "Do not engage. Do not provoke. Under no circumstances should we underestimate these beings. They have turned a world that should kill them into a paradise, and they've done it while making friends with everything that was supposed to eat them." General Scar stood in his command center aboard the dreadnought Extinction, staring at tactical displays that made no sense. In his 400 years of military service, he had conquered 47 worlds for the Gemini Empire. His warriors were the product of centuries of genetic enhancement, bred specifically for warfare, their bodies designed to be perfect killing machines. Their technology was superior, their numbers overwhelming, and their experience unmatched. The humans should have been extinct within a month. Instead, 6 months after the initial invasion of human space, he found himself composing a message he never thought he would send, a request for ceasefire. The very idea would have been laughable when this campaign began, but nothing about fighting humans had gone according to any military doctrine he knew. "Sir," his intelligence officer approached cautiously, "High Command is requesting your final battle assessment." Scar's mandibles clicked with frustration as he activated the communication array. The faces of the Gemini War Council appeared on the holographic display, their expressions expectant. They were waiting for news of total victory, the complete subjugation of another species to add to their ever-growing empire. "They don't fight like any species I've encountered," Scar began, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had seen too much. "When we destroyed their colony on Kepler 442, killing over 2 million civilians, they didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They didn't even seem particularly surprised." He gestured his aide, who activated a recording that had haunted Scar's dreams for months. The audio filled the command center with something no hegemony soldier had ever heard in battle before: music. Dozens of human voices harmonizing in perfect unity as their ships dove into suicide runs against hegemony dreadnoughts. "They were singing," Scar continued, his voice barely controlled. "As they rammed our ships, as they died, they were singing together. Our analysts have been trying to understand the tactical purpose of this behavior for months. There is none. They do it because they want to." The War Council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, General Vec, leaned forward with his typical aggressive posture. Surely their primitive tactics cannot overcome superior hegemony technology and training. Scar laughed, a sound without humor. "That's what I thought. But these humans do things that violate every principle of warfare. They name their ships, their weapons, even their enemies. One of their commanders, a female called Elizabeth, sent me a personal message after I killed her husband in the Battle of Proxima Station. He pulled up the message, translating it into Hegemony Standard. She thanked me. She actually thanked me for giving her a reason to fight harder. Then she proceeded to destroy 3 of my best cruisers using a cargo transport and a mining laser. The recording showed the impossible battle. A human cargo ship, clearly not designed for combat, somehow managing to outmaneuver and destroy military vessels that should have vaporized it instantly. The human commander's voice could be heard throughout the engagement, calm and almost conversational, as if she were discussing the weather rather than engaging in a deadly space battle. Their technology isn't superior, Scar admitted. It's actually quite primitive by our standards. But they use it in ways we never anticipated. They turn mining equipment into weapons, cargo containers into armor, and communication arrays into jamming devices. One human engineer managed to turn our own plasma cannons against us by somehow reprogramming them with nothing but a handheld computing device. But the most unsettling part wasn't their tactics or their improvised technology. It was something far more dangerous, their ability to make friends with anyone, including their enemies. We have a serious morale problem, Scar continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Our captured soldiers are being held in human prisoner of war facilities, and they're being treated better than some of our own troops. The humans share their food, provide medical care, and actually listen to their concerns. He pulled up another recording, this one showing hegemony soldiers who had been rescued from human captivity. Instead of relief, they showed something unprecedented, reluctance to return to duty. 300 of our warriors have refused orders after exposure to human prisoners. They claim the humans showed them kindness they had never experienced. Some are asking to defect. Others simply sit in their cells and refuse to fight. We've had to establish separate facilities just to contain our own troops who have been contaminated by human compassion. The War Council sat in stunned silence as Scar continued his report. Yesterday, one of their ships broadcast a message to our entire fleet. It wasn't a threat or a demand for surrender. It was an invitation to dinner. They wanted to share their food with us while we negotiated a peaceful resolution to the conflict. General Vex scoffed. Obviously a trap. That's what I thought, Scar replied. So I sent a reconnaissance team to investigate. They returned 6 hours later, full of human food and carrying gifts. Small items the humans had crafted by hand as symbols of friendship. My intelligence officers are still trying to determine the tactical purpose of giving handmade presents to enemy soldiers. The final recording Scar played showed the most disturbing sight of all. Hegemony warriors, bred for conquest and enhanced for killing, sitting in a circle with human prisoners, sharing stories and laughing together. The humans had somehow convinced hardened soldiers to talk about their families, their hopes, their fears, things that hegemony doctrine taught them to suppress. Recommendation? Asked the head of the War Council, though his voice already carried defeat. Grant them whatever they want, Scar said quietly. These humans have weaponized friendship itself. Every day we continue this war, we lose more soldiers not to death, but to the realization that there might be a better way to live than constant conquest. 5 years had passed since the Hegemony War ended, and the galaxy had quietly reorganized itself around one simple principle: keep the humans content. It wasn't an official policy written in any treaty or galactic charter, but every species understood it with perfect clarity. The alternative was too terrifying to consider. Ambassador Michael Reynolds sat at the head of the newly formed Galactic Security Council, a position that hadn't existed before his species joined the galactic community. The council chamber, once a place where various species plotted against each other and formed temporary alliances based on fear, had transformed into something resembling a friendly neighborhood gathering. Human cultural attaches were now stationed on every major world, not as occupiers or enforcers, but as the most effective peacekeepers the galaxy had ever seen. The Altari report complete cessation of piracy in their sector. Admiral Linda Foster announced from her seat at the council table. Her voice carried the casual tone of someone discussing the weather, but the implications were staggering. The Altari system had suffered from pirate attacks for over 2 centuries, with various galactic powers unable to provide lasting solutions. How did they manage it? asked Ambassador Zeth of the Crystalline Collective, though he already suspected the answer. Linda smiled, a human expression that had become universally recognized as a sign of impending good news, though it still made some species nervous. Apparently, word spread that humans consider unprovoked attacks on civilians to be personally insulting. The last pirate crew that tried raiding an Altari transport found their ship surrounded by 17 human vessels within 6 hours. What happened to the pirates? Zeth inquired nervously. They're now running a legitimate cargo business, Linda replied. The humans spent 3 days explaining why piracy was morally wrong, helped them set up proper business licenses, and one of the human families has adopted the pirate captain's children into their extended family network. Around the table, representatives from dozens of species nodded with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. This was how humans operated. They didn't destroy their enemies. They converted them into friends through a process that defied all military and diplomatic understanding. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Alliance shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He was the same official who had first warned the Galactic Council about humanity 5 years ago, recommending quarantine and classifying them as an unknown threat. Now he found himself in the peculiar position of hosting 3 human exchange students on his homeworld. Ambassador Veltar, Michael addressed him directly. How is the cultural exchange program progressing? Veltar's purple skin took on a slightly darker shade, something his species did when experiencing complex emotions. It is educational, he replied carefully. The humans Timothy, Jennifer, and Robert have integrated into our society in ways we didn't expect. Problems? Linda asked with genuine concern. Not problems, exactly, Veltar admitted, but they've somehow convinced our youth to start something they call volunteer community service. Our young people are now spending their free time helping elderly Zephyrians with daily tasks, cleaning public spaces, and organizing what they call fun activities for children. The council members exchanged glances. This was typical human behavior. They spread their peculiar concept of community and mutual aid wherever they went, and somehow made it seem like the most natural thing in the galaxy. They've also introduced the concept of birthday parties, Veltar continued, his voice growing more bewildered. Apparently, we're supposed to celebrate the anniversary of each individual's birth with gifts, food, and gathering of friends. My own family now throws parties for our household pets. Michael nodded, as if this were perfectly normal. That sounds wonderful. Building community connections strengthens social bonds. When reporters later asked Veltar why he continued to host human exchange students despite the dramatic changes they brought to his world, his response became legendary across the galaxy. Because the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't having humans as your enemies. It's having them decide you need their protection. The truth behind his words was evident everywhere. The warlike Scarthak Empire had become the galaxy's leading provider of humanitarian aid after humans convinced them that protecting others was the ultimate expression of strength. The isolationist hegemony had opened their borders and established trade relationships with dozens of species they had previously considered beneath notice. Even the machine-like collective had begun incorporating concepts of friendship and loyalty into their programming. But perhaps the most telling change was in the galactic news networks. Where once they had reported on conflicts, territorial disputes, and trade wars, they now covered stories of interspecies cooperation, joint scientific ventures, and cultural festivals. The humans had somehow made peace profitable and friendship fashionable. We have reports from 17 sectors of spontaneous cooperation between traditionally hostile species, Admiral Linda announced, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Kree and Zephyrians are jointly terraforming a new world. The mechanical collective is sharing technology with organic species. Even the isolationist Shadowkin have established diplomatic relations with their neighbors. The galaxy had learned to fear humans not for their violence, but for something far more terrifying, their unlimited capacity for loyalty and their willingness to die for those they called friends. But the most unsettling part was how they had managed to make this work on a galactic scale. Somehow, impossibly, they had convinced everyone that they were all friends now. And the strangest part was, it was actually working